Good afternoon, and welcome to our Building Cyber Resilient Business. I'm Darian Canepa, and so we are pleased to be hosting today's session on behalf of RSM. We'll begin shortly with a welcome to country, followed by an introduction from our cybersecurity expert, Costa Basalwa. So we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and waterways on which we gather today and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Today, I would like to also hand over to Costa, who's going to be presenting today on a very important topic in cybersecurity. So over to you, Costa.
Thank you, Darian. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our session focused on building cyber resilient businesses, a very important and relevant topic in today's day and age. My name is Costa Basalwa. I'm a director with RSM Australia's Cyber Resiliency, Data Privacy, and Risk Management practice here based in Melbourne. Over the last 22 years, I've had the opportunity to work together with industry leaders, regulators, as well as organizations across various geographies. And I'm keen to bring together these insights and experiences so that we can have practical takeaways as part of this session going forward. I'm also an industry speaker, as well as a mentor to cybersecurity students at the universities, as well as a member of the Technical Cybersecurity Committee at the Australian Computer Society. In my current role, I lead a team of specialists across the East Coast, specifically focusing on delivering value engagements for our clients, focused on bringing and implementing solutions, assessing capabilities in the field of cybersecurity, infrastructure and cyber resiliency, as well as data privacy and compliance. Okay, with that, let's get started with today's session. The way we are going to go through the details over the next 45 minutes or so is essentially helping all of us understand answers to three specific questions. First, why? Why do we need to essentially focus on capabilities enhancing our cyber resilience? What kind of key challenges do organizations within this particular geography face? What are some of the key frameworks that different organizations are utilizing today, and what are practical steps to implement a appropriate cybersecurity strategy aligned to our business requirements? The what's. What can we do to actually maintain a practical resilience posture? What can we not do, learning from some of the incidents that have happened? What based upon some of the bad practices, if I put it that way, that some of the organizations put in through. What are some of the key capabilities that we have and steps we should take proactively to maintain our resilience posture? And finally, how? Looking at key case studies from the ground, not only within Australia, but also worldwide, hearing from the war stories and focusing on lessons learned so as to take away practical takeaways, which we can implement on a day-to-day basis. Whenever I talk about the concept of resilience, there is this wonderful quote from one of the leading management thinkers of our time, Peter Drucker. What this specific quote does is essentially focus on the importance of adaptability and forward thinking. All of us have different disruptions, changes to essentially manage as part of our day-to-day lives and roles and critical functions that we manage. Making sure we enable ourselves to learn the lessons, utilize the capabilities that we have with new technologies and strategies to actually manage the new advanced risks that we actually face in today's landscape is going to be extremely important for us to be able to maintain a viable posture going forward. The way the agenda has been designed is a 5-point approach. It will enable us to answer and get answers to the details of the questions that we looked at earlier from an objectives perspective. We'll start with the point of view of looking at the need for resilience, essentially understand whys, and essentially understanding what have some of the recent incidents focused on and why we should invest in this capability. We'll also look at obviously the wider Australian landscape, understand the key frameworks and the practical steps to implement that. Post that, we'll jump on to some of the practical recovery measures, the pitfalls that organizations fall into, also look at some of the cloud as well as artificial intelligence capabilities and how they would enhance our capabilities to recover faster, more efficiently, and better. We will then also briefly touch upon the points regarding what can we do today to proactively recover better during pressure situations. How can we actually manage those situations better? Most importantly, we'll have the final section focused on a range of different case studies and incidents from worldwide as well as Australia-specific issues, and which will help us understand the key lessons learned as well as takeaways that we can actually implement. I definitely request you to participate in various polls that will actually be open for all of you to contribute to from time to time, and also keep your questions for the end so that we can answer them giving enough time. With that, let me get started with the first one. We practically hear about a cyber incident impacting organizations not only within Australia but worldwide practically every day. The last 6 to 12 months alone have been quite significant eye-openers in some of the specific incidents that have happened. If you just look about a couple of weeks ago, one of the major Australian superannuation organization faced a major cyber attack, a matter of credential stuffing being used, thousands of members being impacted, hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss, and the legal and reputation costs still mounting and still yet to come in. This was one aspect from a resilience perspective. Another major incident, while it wasn't cyber, but impacting an extraordinarily major organization, which is one of the most critical airports in the world. March 2025, impact to the Heathrow Airport, thousands of flights impacted, hundreds of thousands of passengers being kind of impacted, and financial losses and reputation losses mounting into hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars there. Again, the legal and reputational costs still mounting. Again, in this particular case, a critical aspect of third-party dependence being clearly called out from a resilience point of perspective, while there are still plans and procedures in place. Just about a year ago, almost practically every organization faced a major disruption from the CrowdStrike incident. Again, a range of different disruptions to critical functions, critical operations, from small to medium enterprises to large organizations. Thousands of organizations and millions of obviously customers impacted, with critical functions being down for weeks to days. Again, in this particular case, the root cause, which is dependent upon an external solution. What are all these specific incidents from time to time telling us? While some of them have dependencies on third parties, some of them have dependencies on certain software assets, while some of them have dependencies, obviously, in the way we manage our vulnerability assessments and patching to key controls. What they are telling us is essentially the increasingly complex and uncertain landscape that we as cybersecurity and overall strategic leaders face within our purview today. It is telling us the fact that resiliency as a key function to maintain is essentially no longer just an optional aspect. It is an essential function to invest in for organizations to survive, to thrive, and to be able to maintain viable critical operation. Let's look at the threat landscape. We kind of briefly touched upon it earlier as well. The threat landscape has been evolving. Before we go into that, there is a small poll that will be open for all of you. If I may kindly request you to maybe quickly contribute over the next 10 seconds or so. Which do you think is one of the key threats that has been determined, at least in 2025, as one of the top threats to Australian businesses? Is it physical theft? Is it denial of service attacks? Is it ransomware and business email compromise? Is it outages from power perspective, or is it natural disasters? Please take 10 seconds to maybe choose an option and submit your responses. Thank you. Darian, if I may request your support to call out which has been one of the top answers there. Thank you. I think, number one, thank you so much for, submitting to that. And it's great to see significant awareness from various different participants. And you're absolutely right. Ransomware and business email compromise is definitely one of the top risks to Australian businesses that has been seen in 2025 across various different reports, including that by the ACSC. Add an additional element to insider threats from that perspective, and then you realize the increasingly difficult landscape that we are seeing in organizations across the board. And that continues to be evident when we look at additional inputs. The fact that an Australian business today gets attacked by a cyber attack every 6 minutes, the impact running into millions of dollars. It's not just large organizations or the big four banks or the big superannuation organizations. We're talking about small to medium enterprises to large organizations, each one of them being potential attack targets. And we're looking at a situation whereby these attacks are getting sophisticated by the use of new technologies, new capabilities, and a strategic shift in the way specific targets have been selected. And what is that shift? what we're seeing, especially over the last 12 to 24 months, is a specific shift from a perspective of moving on to data extortion, causing significant operational disruptions, especially in critical services, and causing long-term reputational harm. Moving on from just encryption and extortion to making sure that we can actually steal and leak. Moving from a traditional phishing point of view to moving to long-term business email compromise. Moving towards targeted specific intrusion. Living off the land techniques utilizing existing software solutions within computers to further cause longer data breach. The main point here is essentially the fact that the target for cyber attacks, especially in this geography as well as wider geographies, is every single organization. There are multiple and a multitude of challenges that organizations and security leaders face today. And that's one of the reasons why we call out the fact that security leaders as well as strategic leaders managing cyber risks are extremely stressed from that perspective. So what are these challenges? What kind of challenges are we talking about? There are multitude of challenges that organizations of every size, every shape, and every domain face today. Right from regulatory compliance pressures to be able to meet the stringent requirements that get increasingly complex over a period of time, to balancing the cost constraints that we have, especially in today's economy. Keeping up with the technological developments, the new capabilities that the attackers have, making sure that we are proactive, taking steps to manage our risks, to managing the technology and the skills gaps internally, as well as having a visibility of our external outsourced service providers and third-party providers. It is an increasingly complex landscape, an increasingly complex challenge that we face. And that is because we see that specific impact that has especially happened over the last multiple incidents that we have seen, right from financial losses to long-term reputational damage to impact from a competitiveness perspective to be able to continue viable critical operations in every industry. So that's essentially the kind of landscape and the threat point of view that we've seen so far. Further focuses our importance as to why we should invest in this capability. At the same time, specifically in this geography, we have a multitude of regulations and frameworks, some mandatory, while some essentially being optional to actually align to. Let's look at what these particular frameworks and regulations are and what are some of the key positives to take away from each one of them, as well as practical steps to manage them as part of our strategy. Before I go there, a small poll once again. Again, we hear about the Essential 8 framework quite commonly. One of the most obviously popular and definitely recommended as a minimum baseline for most organizations in Australia. What do we think is one of the essential 8 strategies, which is recommended by ACSC? Is it outsourcing to a third party? Is it the encryption from an email's perspective? Is it application controls to prevent unapproved apps? Is it allowing unrestricted admin access, or is it backups once in a while? If I can please request maybe 10 seconds of your time to contribute to the poll. And as earlier, Gary, I request your support to share the answers based upon what the responses have been. Again, wonderful responses. Great to see the awareness across, obviously, the audience here. Absolutely right. Application control is one of the key essential 8 strategy, which has been recommended by ACSC and continues to be one of the key focus areas for organizations. We talked about frameworks, and there are a multitude of frameworks. Obviously, we won't have enough time to go through each one of them. But each framework brings in its own set of, obviously, positives to focus on before we select a particular framework to align to, and obviously challenges from a perspective of aligning to as well as implementation. Whether it's specific framework based upon the geography, such as Victoria or NSW or others, whether it's the industry that we work in, for example, APRA CPS would be applicable to the financial and the super organizations, to the worldwide common standards, such as the NIST CSF 2.0. Each one of them focusing on a range of different controls, from governance controls to essentially identification detection controls to ongoing management controls to user awareness controls. Each one of them has certain challenges that we have to work through as part of our baseline to work towards a strategy. So how do we do that? What's the best way to do that? One of the key ways from a practical perspective is to ensure there is appropriate understanding of the relevant frameworks that we need to align. Again, based upon the industry, based upon the organization sector, and obviously the mandatory requirements. A current state assessment obviously gives you a great view in terms of which are your critical areas to kind of focus on. A tailored implementation plan, then again, based upon that, gives you a good view to essentially start planning that. But more importantly, at the end of the day, from a governance perspective, it's always important to invest in training and awareness as well as regulatory audits and improvements to ensure you get a visibility as to how you're progressing with respect to your maturity uplift plans as you implement certain strategies and frameworks. A good way to do that is typically a roadmap approach. A roadmap approach enables organizations to go strategic, top-down, essentially directed by management based upon business-aligned capabilities, business-aligned priorities to pick the right set of frameworks, align the right set of initiatives as well as strategy points of view, and then start focusing on top-down from your most important assets for your crown jewels to the ones needing immediate protection, to ones then needing short-term investments, to the ones needing long-term investments such as certification and other long-term maturity uplift capabilities such as automation. Each one of them is absolutely important. But at the same time, each comes at a cost. And there is a fine balance, as you all know, that we typically need to maintain between obviously the risk that we have to manage, the user experiences and operational effectiveness that we have to manage, and also the security controls that we have to implement as well. Now, we've gone through the whys. We have focused on the reason why we should invest in this particular area, specifically cyber resilience. Let's take a quick look as to what can we do as practical recovery measures and what are some of the pitfalls that organizations fall into when going through implementing these recovery measures as well. As earlier, before we start going in details, again, a small poll where I would request your input, a very simple one again. We know what a business continuity plan is. What do you think from organization perspective, who should be typically involved in preparing an organization business continuity plan? Again, please take 10 seconds of your time to actually select the right answer. Is it the IT team? Is it the CEO and the legal team? Do you think it's only senior management focus? Do you want to always bring in external consultants only, or do you think it should be an organization-wide approach towards creating a plan? Please take 10 seconds. And as earlier, Darian, I'll request your support to share the answers when ready. Thank you. And again, fantastic contribution. Again, thank you, everyone. Great to see really good awareness within this particular section as well. You're absolutely right. It is an organization-wide approach, especially to enable you to protect your critical function. It involves your executives, it involves your human resources, your legal teams, your communication teams, your operations team. It absolutely must involve your third parties and dependent teams as well. So why do these particular plans fail? How many times do we see a situation whereby we need a specific recovery plan to work, but it doesn't because it does not account for the new changes within the organization, because it does not account for the new project that's been recently implemented, because it does not account for a small change that was implemented a few months ago on a specific critical application, because it does not account for a communication capability, because it does not account for a decision making it easier for senior leaders to take some calls in a pressure situation. There are a range of different points of view based upon dynamics of an organization. How we see quite oftenly huge documented plans sitting on shelves which have never been battle tested. Not just testing of a BCP, but ITDRP or a cybersecurity incident response plan, but a scenario testing which helps us comprehensively test across all these particular plans and cutting across this organization. We see commonly issues whereby there is lack of end-to-end ownership and updates, which again cause the plan to be irrelevant. Dependence upon tools as well as poor communication protocols absolutely stand out as one of the key reasons why some plans actually fail to provide you with the result that you need. How often do we see that the business impact analysis metrics that are determined by some of the business teams don't realistically match up with what the technology team can provide you because there are some unrealistic assumptions? And more importantly, How many times do we see that the executives, including the board members, are not being involved in the creation of these particular plans? And when it comes down to decision making, there is chaos, right? Unfortunately, even in large organizations, which are well-funded teams too, we see this quite often. While we're not going to go down into the basics of what the BCPs and ITDRPs and the cybersecurity incident response plans are, some of the key components that we see are absolutely essential. Right from making sure we have a comprehensive impact analysis to determine the metrics, to ensuring obviously there are capabilities from a communication and aligned recovery strategies, to the point of view to making sure there is clarity and visibility in terms of the assets, including their life cycles. We don't want to end up in a situation whereby an asset is completely out of support and it's going to be utilized from a perspective of recovery in a disaster recovery situation. Third-party vendor recovery plans. Who is going to support us during what situation, including state teams which are out of country and are working in different time zones. Cybersecurity incident response plans and playbooks. A data breach playbook is different to essentially a ransomware response playbook is different to essentially your application recovery playbook. Do we have clarity in roles and responsibilities? Do we know who and how is going to trigger the invocation of these plans? And as you will all agree, many of these aspects and components are across all these particular plans and individual playbooks too. So the most practical tips from that perspective, making sure there is clear ownership within the organization to the role rather than to an individual, making sure at the end of the day that there is clear cross-functional input and ownership and governance of maintenance of these particular plans, making it part of the KPIs, making it usable and relevant rather than making it a 500, 300-page document which nobody can actually use during an actual crisis. Quick reference guides and quick decision-making reference guides are always extremely useful. Testing, we'll talk a bit about testing as well shortly, making sure that we're not just testing a plan on its own, but making sure there are different kinds of tests, making sure we are testing on a scenario. What happens if an application goes down in a critical location, causing a downtime for critical function? It may involve invocation of your BCPs, your ITDRPs, and your cybersecurity incident response plans for all we know. Making sure we're able to understand the gaps and fix it as part of our ongoing learning measure. And making sure we are not working in silos at the end of the day. As much as it might seem difficult to work through that, we know for sure that when we have all the teams involved during creation of these particular plans and metrics, we obviously have a much better and a much clarified, unified command structure. I touched upon testing, and there are different range, ways and means that we can actually test certain critical plans as well. Right from obviously testing from a technical perspective, whether it's security penetration testing, doing your red teamings and purple teamings, to your breach and attack simulations, to your chaos engineering for cloud. There are also obviously tests from a perspective of your security controls testing, your backup and disaster recovery testing, your tabletop testing for your specific scenarios and simulation, your vulnerability assessments as well, and stress testing by a live recovery too. More importantly, the non-technical testing aspect part, the social engineering situation. How often do we actually discover that we can, the user awareness levels or the physical access controls to a very, very critical facility is so low, and anyone can just walk in and access a particular network console. Making sure we are testing that as part of our ongoing testing strategy is important so as to address the risk that has been determined to the organization. At the end of the day, the important aspect to understand and focus on that the focus of these particular testing based upon what you choose is not just preventing something happening or not just getting a plan tested and a tick mark. The focus from a strategic point of view, top down, should be reducing the impact if there is a potential disruption tomorrow, if there's a potential attack on critical services and capabilities tomorrow, if there's a potential unavailability of a critical resource tomorrow, could be a IT resource or could be an individual resource, to be able to ensure the people are able to make decisions in a timely manner, in a focused manner. And the best way to keep a track of how we are doing, whether it's better or for worse, is at the end of the day, as you will all agree, is from a point of view of tracking the right set of metrics, right? So these are obviously some example metrics that we would use, typically divided into the quantitative metrics as well as qualitative metrics. Did we detect in time? Were we able to meet our recovery time objectives for the critical system? Did we test everything that we should be testing? Did we actually make sure that we involve all the right teams? Are we testing the plan on a regular basis? Are the BIAs being updated? The qualitative metrics. Are people able to take decisions at the right levels, at the right time? Is the executive team being able to quickly take calls and decisions based upon what you have documented today to support the operational teams in taking the calls? Is there enough and appropriate coordination across the strategic teams to the tactical and operational teams? Are people aware of their roles and responsibilities? Do people know how to communicate not only to the regulators, to customers, but also internally to your internal employees, as well as wherever needed, reaching out to external stakeholders? All these metrics, especially when managing an incident, become extremely important too. The other aspect, which is commonly forgotten, is your dependence on third parties and fourth parties, which are now being called as the right way material service providers, right? Especially in the likes of APRA CPS 230. The third parties and our partner teams play an extremely important role. More importantly, sometimes supporting critical functions such as service desk or application development, to in many cases a complete outsource function, including business continuity, including obviously incident management and ITIL services. It's important to make sure that there is visibility in terms of these third parties and their dependencies further as well as part of your resilience posture management too. We'll actually see some examples in the case studies as we go forward, where the concentration risks have actually caused major disruption for some of the organizations. It's important to understand what risks do we actually see, especially with respect to some of these key partner teams which work with us, which are a critical element of our function, which is being provided to our customers too. There would be barely any session nowadays which does not talk about cloud and artificial intelligence. Do these enable you to get or enable you to recover better and faster? They absolutely do. Before I go into how they do that, let's try and understand what do you think is the average recovery time objective for a medium-sized average organization in Australia today. Again, if I can request you to take 10 seconds of your time to choose one of the options that you think is an average recovery time for a medium-sized Australian business today. It doesn't matter whether it's a complete outage, whether it's a BCP situation or ITDRP. Again, please take 10 seconds of your time. Thank you. Again, Darren, if I may request your input for the actual results. I think it's good to see that we're in the right direction. Again, thank you for your contribution. 24 to 48 hours. That's what we typically see within Australia for small to medium enterprises, typically recovering the critical systems. Now, as you can imagine, there is a variation based upon the dynamics involved, the support staff, the criticality of the application, the complexity of the services, and so forth. But on an average, we see the 24 to 48 hours as the mean average there. Now, this can be improved better, right? We obviously would want all our services to be up all the time. It should help us being, reaching out to customers 24 hours, 365 days a year. AI and cloud capabilities are going to be one way to go in that direction. Artificial intelligence, especially, is going to play an extremely key role over the coming years in enhancing and enabling you to actually improve these recoveries and your resilience posture. Right from providing you predictive analytics to helping you from an anomaly detection perspective, from a cyber, to actually helping you from an auditing perspective when it comes down to prioritization of your key controls and measures too. From a cloud perspective, I think I would be preaching to the choir, but then I know we would not go into details of cloud, but we all know cloud brings in significant amount of benefit when it comes down to helping us from a resiliency perspective. Whether it is upscaling or descaling back based upon deployment of resources that we need, whether it is bringing in geographic redundancies, including obviously making sure we are mitigating localized disasters, to bringing in capabilities from immutable backups to centralized logging capabilities, including security services that are available across all cloud providers today. But there are some challenges that we need to keep in mind as well. From an AI perspective, we have briefly touched upon that earlier. Again, a range of different capabilities, right from incident investigation to threat detection. We'll not go into the solutions, but then again, at the end of the day, this is going to become a major contributor towards enhancing capabilities for organizations going forward as well. The key aspect for us to understand is as much as they are strategically important, it's also going to have its own set of challenges to come with. Yes, they're going to help with faster provisioning of resources. Yes, it's going to help us reduce dependencies on manual efforts. Yes, absolutely, it will help over a period of time reducing recovery metrics. At the same time, we need to understand what kind of cost and complexity does it bring for strategic leaders? What kind of regulatory compliance challenges, especially with data staying within the country from a sovereignty perspective, do we face within this country? We also need to understand what kind of AI models and accuracy of these models is going to cause, obviously, consequent results and issues for us. Now, again, as earlier, equivalent balance between the risk versus cost at the end of the day for us to manage the risk that we have in play. With that, let's go into the next aspect. What can we do to really help us manage incidents better, right? As we can all imagine, there are a range of different measures that we can take, right from preparation perspective to a detection perspective to containment to recovery to post-incident analysis. Let's look at each one of them as to some of the key measures which will help us in that direction. When it comes down to preparation, obviously at the end of the day, having clear, well-defined, well-tested cybersecurity incident response plans, aligned playbooks based upon the different scenarios are always going to be useful. Having clarity in terms of roles and responsibilities, whether it is major incident management, specific incident response, capabilities in terms of distribution across legal PR is extremely important too. Making sure that we have invested in obviously solutions which help us from a detection perspective, whether it is EDR tools or a SIM capability, always helps from that detection capability too as well. But nothing, absolutely nothing will prepare you better than making sure that you have tested, battle tested these plans based upon scenarios which are relevant to you, right? Whether it is dependency on third parties, which is a major contributor, or whether it is dependency on an outsourced capability that you have, or whether you have potential application which could be taken completely offline, and what do people do within that case? Making sure choosing a appropriate scenario is going to be extremely important. Similarly, from a detection perspective, making sure we have real-time monitoring capabilities and solutions from that, as well as aligned processes, right? From categorization of incidents from a severity perspective to the aligned processes to actually take actions based upon those indicators of compromise. From a containment perspective, again, focusing on not just short-term actions, but also long-term. What can we do to ensure that we quickly contain the balance, quickly contain the damage to obviously the systems which have been identified and classified? What can we do from a long-term perspective, including taking measures to disable accounts, to obviously remove certain capabilities or features till there is a complete forensic analysis done is extremely important as well. Now, eradication obviously involves a lot of technical capabilities, as we can imagine, but it is also changing and bringing in the right set of processes. Apart from obviously forensic tools and malware and rootkit management tools, making sure that we have appropriate ongoing processes for vulnerability management, for penetration testing, red teaming, purple teaming, it's going to be equally important as well. At the same time, from a recovery point of view, making sure we have the right set of processes to rebuild systems and restore data, including capabilities to offsite data completely off the network, is going to be important as we work towards system restoration post an incident analysis, and obviously as we go into the recovery mode. But that being said, nothing prepares an organization better for the next incident as the previous one, right? So making sure we invest, making sure that we are focusing on dedicated efforts in terms of understanding what the root cause was, rather than obviously finger pointing, making sure we take the learnings back to adjust our plans, our playbooks, our capabilities and processes. Did we change the change management process to align to the IT/DRP updates post a change, right? As an example, making sure we are able to report to stakeholders in terms of the progress being made and the incidents being learned and the actions being taken, including to obviously the governance members as well as an ongoing audit members as well. At the end of the day, and I've combined all this together in a specific illustration, right? What kind of activities can we do before, during, and after an incident? Each one of them has its own specific importance when it comes down to maintaining a resilient posture for your organization. There are certain key metrics that are going to help you work towards the success, whether it's your mean time to identify, your mean time to contain, or your mean time to recover. But there are certain non-technical metrics which are from a business point of view going to be important as well. Your effectiveness of your decision making, your knowledge, obviously, of your key members to understand their roles and responsibilities and execute them, your clarity in terms of the impact to the business, as well as making sure there are efforts to learn from that. We've so far covered a range of different things. We've covered the why as to why should we invest in this function. We've covered the how in terms of obviously what can we do as actions to actually manage incidents and situations better. We'll now cover some case studies and understand what are some of the key learnings and insights we can take from them. The first one is obviously, as we all know, an extremely highly visible incident, especially in Australia. September 2022, one of the most major operators within Australia faced a major data breach, exposed critical data for thousands of customers. Billions in terms of damage from a reputation as well as legal point of view. The government inquiry is running for quite significant time, that running into obviously regulatory fines and legal actions. So the key lessons that came out of that specific incident include importance of making sure there is appropriate and significant investment in data encryption controls, as well as API securities, investment in your vulnerability management, patch management, penetration testing capabilities end-to-end, having visibility of your data flow, and again, end-to-end across every different critical application. But most importantly, the non-technical aspect, which is transparent communication with your stakeholders. DBS, an extremely major financial services provider based in PJ, had a major outage in 2021 where critical banking services were unavailable for more than 48 hours. As earlier, major impact from a regulatory perspective, financial perspective, as well as customer trust perspective. There were a range of different learnings which were published after that. First, scenario testing is important, right? Critical to make sure we are able to test scenarios which cut across plans. Making sure we're able to invest in diversified cloud strategies, not having everything as a single point of failure, as well as earlier, making sure that during such incidents, communication is clear and transparent to customers as well as into other stakeholders. While this one was not necessarily a cyber attack, but also focuses on third-party issues when it comes down to critical incident. Especially after COVID, as we all know, there was significant disruptions to the supply chain of semiconductors in Taiwan. So the key lessons that have come, especially considering the delays and impact to factories and organizations and businesses across the world, include at the end of the day, making sure there is complete clarity in terms of your suppliers, your networks, your dependencies. There is clarity in terms of the centralization approach that has been used, or if we need to decentralize in terms of dependence of capabilities that are on a specific service provider. The Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, which was in 2021, again, a major eye-opener, significant operations impacted for more than 5 days, a multi-million-dollar impact. In this particular case, in fact, a big ransomware sprayed as well. Unfortunately, it never works out well for the target. The critical infrastructure in this particular case of more than IT, it was the operational technology impacted as well. That's another area which needs to be invested in, which requires special appropriate focus apart from IT is extremely important. Making sure we're able to enhance our incident response plan, catering to the niche requirements of critical capabilities continues to be important as well. Again, in this particular case, when you have dependence on specific niche service providers of OT capabilities, we need to have them as part of our resilience management planning. A slightly different attack, but again, extremely highly visible, a social engineering attack that cost, again, millions of dollars to one of the largest hospitality chains in the Americas. A breach of internal systems, the lack of significant, there's significant exposure of sensitive customer data. And they did publish these learnings after that as well, including the fact that apart from technical controls testing, user awareness and social engineering continues to remain a major vulnerability, right? We need to invest on that weakest chain or weakest link in the chain. We need to understand what kind of access control policies and procedures and technologies we have in place. They need to include, obviously, the bare minimum of the multi-factor authentication. At the same time, we need to audit, review them on a regular basis, and it has to be comprehensive, not just on the solution, but also social engineering testing, including physical testing time to time. Security awareness, I think we've kind of touched upon it earlier, but again, continues to be an extremely critical aspect. And finally, again, back to Australia, we've seen a major impact to one of the largest medical insurers within the country in October 2022, where there were, again, millions of customers impacted with their critical sensitive medical data being breached too. Again, a range of different impacts, not only from a legal perspective, regulatory scrutiny perspective, but also significant cost, including overhauls that we actually saw. And there are a range of different case studies that have been published so far. The key lessons that have come out again is to ensure obviously critical controls, including encryption, data access controls are invested in, reviewed on a regular basis, and ensure they are governed and tracked as well. Penetration testing, vulnerability assessments continue to be important, continue to be critical, and should be kind of managed and obviously led as well. But most importantly, policies and procedures, they cannot be in a situation whereby these particular policies and procedures don't support what you're intending to achieve going forward as well. So again, some really good learnings to take away, aligning to some of the key aspects that we've seen so far. Before I jump into the key insights and practical takeaways, I do want to quickly focus on what we are doing, working together and partnering with some of our clients as well. Sorry. Security, data privacy, and resiliency continues to again be a critical area where we as an organization continue to work very closely with our customers, including obviously our audit engagement. And that has been evident for us as part of winning the Client Choice Award 7 years in a row, in 2025 included, where we actually see this validation coming from the customers. In terms of cyber resiliency and privacy services, we actually are working together with our customers to provide a range of different capabilities, right from transformation of security strategies to actually implementing solutions to assessment from a technology as well as policies and procedures and access control perspective to conducting technical CREST certified tests, red teaming, purple teaming to vulnerability assessment. These include then also creating plans, procedures, playbooks, and actually testing them right from privacy impact assessments to business impact assessment to implementation of the right set of standards. Resiliency continues to be a critical area for us to focus on, especially including business impact and dependency analysis, ensuring we're able to provide a gap analysis with respect to your resiliency posture, and actually testing these plans where we actually test them right from board members to business and technology members. As part of this webinar, we are essentially offering two specific control checks to all our customers, which are quick, short, and simple checks focused on cyber controls as well as resiliency gap reviews. The first one is a short, sharp engagement focus on key elements of cyber controls, which are important for every organization in every sector, which helps especially the strategic leaders get a view as to your current state in all these elements before prioritizing or investing in the key areas from a strategy perspective. The second is essentially a resilience gap review. Again, a short, sharp engagement for us to help you out with understanding the maturity in the critical areas of resiliency, whether it's recovery readiness, your supply chain resilience, or ongoing board and executive awareness of key measures. Again, helping you decide what areas need to be invested in before you go with a comprehensive overall. With that, I'll go into the final aspect of our presentation, which is the practical takeaways. We've seen the importance of investing in the area when it comes down to resilience. We have seen the capabilities that are available to us to invest in these particular capabilities and improve our resilience. What can we take away? When it comes down to strategic resilience plays, there are two ways to look at it. One, from a senior leadership perspective, which is going to be strategic, and the other is going to be tactical from an operational perspective. The first is essentially the fact that we need to build, obviously, for ongoing recovery and overall resilience, right? Making sure we have enough plans, appropriate, well-defined plans, comprehensive plans covering all these aspects. At the same time, testing it, making sure the technology support that continues to be important too. Stress testing these particular plans and your response capabilities overall, including your decision-making capabilities, cannot be overstated. We are looking at an increasing situation whereby we need the executive level team members, including the board members, to get involved, understand their roles and responsibilities and coordination requirements when it comes down to a crisis. At the same time, there is a need to make sure that the technical tabletop or technical live recovery test, including specific scenario tests, are also tested to make sure the plans and playbooks are relevant. The supply chain, your third parties, your fourth parties, your operational service providers obviously continue to be an important element as part of your cyber resilience, making sure that your SLAs, your agreements, your contracts, your ongoing third-party risk management posture is aligned to your risk management requirements is going to be important, apart from making sure that obviously we have the software and tools internally to manage that. At the end of the day, whether you're developing software internally or bringing in new capabilities, making sure that you're driving towards a secure by design culture is going to be extremely important, including investing in secure code reviews, testing these technically from time to time, but overall promoting our DevSecOps culture. At the end of the day, as I mentioned before, nothing is going to prepare you for your crisis to confidently present that as much as testing them. Maintaining that up to date actually prepares you towards that, but also making sure that you have appropriately well-defined playbooks which are aligned to the changes within the organizations as well. Finally, at the end of the day, the best way to drive your resilience and your maturity uplift is going to be making sure we have a cybersecurity culture. Making sure that we're able to demonstrate commitment from a management perspective, prioritize and allocate resources, and support activities and initiatives towards that direction. It's a security-first mindset from the top down, which is going to enable you towards working towards that end goal of resilience, and also encourage your team to continuously learn from incidents and also help your positive cyber resiliency posture. Finally, at the end of the day, when it comes down to resilience, there are 6 key things to think about. Making sure we're designing to withstand failure, making sure we go beyond recovery, but plan for obviously the longer run, making sure there's an assessment of the critical elements you're trying to protect. If there are incidents that do happen, we need to make sure that we are able to enable the organization to adapt quickly and also with agile plans and measures in place. Most importantly, without learning and improvement, that cannot be enough catalyst in place to actually drive positive changes within the organization. And most another aspect being ensuring that we're able to collaborate beyond silos, obviously, business teams and technology team and third-party teams. All these are critical elements that need to come together to enable you to work towards a truly resilient posture. I would like to end this particular presentation with a quick point of view that at the end of the day, we know it's not just a single person or a team which is responsible for overall resilience. It is not a project. We are not trying to achieve perfection. But what we are trying to achieve is essentially a persistent, focused efforts supported by the management using aligned strategic initiatives to work towards a state of readiness. I really hope that all of you have taken some practical insights and this has been a useful presentation. Feel free to reach out to me if there's any ways and means I can support your initiatives, your plans and strategies as you go towards us, or there are any areas that we can help you. And I hope you've taken some good practical takeaways. Thank you, everyone. And I hope everyone has a great day ahead. Darian, I'll hand it over back to you.
Hello, thanks, Kostap. I hope everybody found the webinar quite insightful. We are going to proceed with the Q&A. We've got a question here from Thomas Lucky. What's your opinion on the feasibility of getting third parties to sign up to and cooperate with right to audit clauses?
Yeah, and I think that's a very viable question, especially in the lights of what we are seeing with the likes of, for example, APRA CPS 230 and the requirements from a perspective of material service providers being a critical element in the overall chain. Now, that's a specific, initiative that has been kind of a bit dynamic based upon service provider to service provider. We are seeing in certain cases a lot of resistance where certain service providers are being resistant to that or obviously have put in their own costs wherever necessary. But in certain cases, service providers in this particular, in certain cases have been quite positive to kind of share those particular measures that they're putting in place and being open, being part of those particular points of view too. So it's been a bit dynamic. It's still evolving, but yes, there have been certain, instances, if I put it that way, where we've seen a bit more defensive postures and resistant to actually, sharing that information. And I hope that will change as we go forward. Darian?
Is there any other questions? Anything else you would like to add, perhaps, Kostap?
I think really want to thank everyone for joining the session today. We will obviously be sharing this particular recording. Definitely highly recommend everyone to share their feedback on the webinar and obviously reach out to us if there are areas and means that we can actually support their resiliency strategies and postures. And most importantly, I want to thank everyone for making the time to join us today.